Okay, so good morning, everybody. We have Joy from sunny Winchester, Mia from sunny Salisbury. It is sunny, isn't it? It's absolutely gorgeous. Irene's tuning in from Paris. Wow, I'm a bit jealous, I'm not going to lie. Just to say that before we get started, I just wanted to warn you that I am currently self-isolating with COVID, actually feeling mostly completely fine, but if I get a bit croaky towards the end, then you know why. Crystal Palace, oh, very close. Wonderful. Okay, so let's kick off with a little bit of housekeeping. So she says, let's just click on here. I'm not feeling too bad, thank you. Okay, it's a little bit of housekeeping. My daughter's here as well. My 11-year-old, she's also self-isolating. So the two of us have been struck down, but so far so good. Okay, so just a couple of bits of housekeeping. You'll notice if you look down at the bottom of your screen, you will see both a chat and a Q&A function. The chat, hopefully, as you've already seen, is nice and lively, and I do love it when I do these talks and I see people having a chat with each other, a bit of networking going on. Feel free to chat away, say hi, talk about your business, tell us where you are, what you do, general chat. You know, as we're going through the talk, if you've got a thought or a comment you want to share, then feel free to do so. What I really would love you to do is, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. So the Q&A function is next to chat. If we keep Q&A for the questions and chat for chatting, it will make it much easier when it gets to the end and I do questions, if the questions themselves are in the Q&A, because I just simply won't be able to scroll back through the chat and capture all of the questions that have been dropped in there. So if you've got a question, even if you put it in the chat and then realize you meant to put it in the Q&A, just copy it, drop it in the Q&A, and then that way I can feel more certain to capture it at the end, because it's just me manning the chat today. So it will be really helpful. As I said, if you've got a question, you want to get it answered, the Q&A is the best place to put it. The questions we're going to do at the end, I'm going to be talking for roughly about 40 minutes. And after that, we'll do questions. The session, I think, was scheduled for somewhere between 11 and 12. I will keep going. When I've done this before, I've been here for like a full hour and a half sometimes with questions. I will still keep going as long as I can, as long as my voice holds out. So if you have somewhere else that you need to be at 12 o'clock or you have to go early, then don't worry about it, that's fine. This is being recorded and I will be sending out a replay this afternoon. Just depends how long it takes Zoom to process it and everything else. So if you've got a question, then do definitely stick around and ask, and I will do my very best to answer as many as I can, unless, as I said, my voice gives out first. And then, as I said, if you've got to go and you can't stay past 12 o'clock and you haven't had your question answered, just don't worry about it. I will go through them and I will answer them to the best of my ability, and you can watch it on the replay. Hope that makes sense. Third piece of housekeeping. Gilly sees the chat now, more chat. Yes, excellent, loving this. Loads of people introducing themselves, wonderful people from London, East London, Cardiff. Amazing. Okay, so third piece of housekeeping, if you're watching this and you want to do a screenshot, show me where you're watching, share it on Instagram. I always love to see that, and I always reshare when people share theirs when they're watching. And if you're watching on the replay, feel free to tag us as well and tell us that you're watching on the replay, because we love to see that too. Okay, so moving on then, this talk is for you. Oh no, bad start. Got my water though. If you've had a tough few months, if you're struggling with motivation, you've maybe seen sales really fluctuating, you're worried that you're doing something wrong and you want to make the most out of the rest of the year. Excuse me. Okay, one more thing to say as well. Sometimes Zoom decides it hates my microphone and cuts me off. Excuse me. If that happens, I will switch to a different microphone, but don't worry. It just all of a sudden says, we can't find your microphone, even though it's right here. Okay, well, I'm having a little drink. Have a look at that list. Tell me if any of those numbers sound like something that you're experiencing at the moment, whether it's been a tough few months, whether you're feeling the struggle with motivation, whether you feel like sales have been fluctuating and you're feeling like maybe it's something that you've done. So tell me in the chat if any of those numbers, any or all of those numbers sound familiar. And I'm going to have a little drink. It always happens whenever I do a talk. I was, you know, having been absolutely fine right beforehand, as soon as I start talking. 3 and 4, all of them, 2 and 3, 5, oh yes, all of them. Okay, all right. So, excuse me. Right, I will be back in 1 second. Sorry about this. Okay, started in 2021, October 21, so steep learning curve. Okay, yes, lots of people. Yeah, it has been a strange couple of years, I completely agree. Very quickly, I always like to include this slide just to make sure we're clear on who we're not here for. This isn't about a silver bullet, unfortunately, I wish it was. You're not somebody who cares about your products or your customers. Again, that's very, very rare. I don't know that I've ever really come across small businesses who don't care about their products or their customers. And also just to say, I will at the end very briefly give you a short bit of information about my membership, the Resilient Retail Club, just to pre-warn you ahead of time. But don't worry, we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about what's happening in 2022 and answering your questions. Just a little bit about me, if you don't know me already, my name's Catherine Eardley. I'm the founder of the Resilient Retail Club. This is my 22nd year in the retail industry. I spent the first 17 working with high street retailers, managing budgets of up to £400 million. And ever since 2018, I have been working exclusively with small and startup independent brands and retailers. Who are the people that I really love to work with. I am very proud to be a Forbes contributor, which means I write a regular column for Forbes about starting and scaling a product business. Through that work, I was absolutely honoured to be named one of the top 100 retail influencers in the world by Rethink Retail, which is a list of experts, academics, retail organisations and analysts looking and talking about the retail industry. And what makes me particularly proud of this award was that I am one of the only people on that list who specifically talk about small business retail as opposed to the bigger chains. When I use the word retail, just an FYI for any of you thinking, well, I don't own a shop. Retail, the dictionary definition of retail is buying things and selling them. And that's the definition that I take. So if you sell candles on Etsy, you're part of the retail industry. If you have an Instagram account and you sell your artwork through that account, you're part of the retail industry in the same way that John Lewis, Tesco's, Asda are. It's just a different part of the retail industry. And as I said, one of the most exciting parts in my opinion. And I was also very honoured to be named one of the top 10 advisors in the UK by Enterprise Nation last year and the #1 sales advisor. So that's enough about me. What we're going to be talking about today is looking at what is impacting the retail business right now, the retail industry. What are some of the big factors that are impacting them? But most specifically, not just what are they, but what does that mean for your business? And we're going to be thinking about some ideas, some questions, some inspiration to think about how you can react to this in your business, what it means for you and how to move forward. And then we're going to finish with a list of actions to take to grow sales before we go on to questions. And so everything that we're talking about here comes from a variety of different sources. As a Forbes contributor, I get pitched a lot of research, which is wonderful for me because it means every day in my inbox I'm sent surveys, analysis, reports on what's happening in the industry and what's changing, which is an excellent position for me to be in when it comes to talking about this kind of thing as to what's happening in the wider industry picture. It also comes from hundreds of conversations that I have with the club members. We have our regular Ask Me Anything sessions, so I'm being asked questions during those, but also more importantly, every day I'm in the group Monday to Friday answering people's questions. So I get to see a lot of what people are talking about, what's on their minds. And of course, the one-to-one work that I do with clients and talking to other small businesses, that's all informed what we're going to be going through today. So here are the factors that we're going to be running through. we are going to be talking about consumer confidence. We're going to be talking about rising prices. We're going to be talking about the evolution of online selling, what that means for your business. We're going to be talking about conscious consumerism. And then we're going to be focusing a little bit about retention and the shifting, how the ability to acquire new customers is really shifting, and the shift between acquisition and retention, what that means. We'll get there in a bit. So let's start with consumer confidence, because I think personally, when I talk to businesses, this is one of the factors that's having a real impact. And I think that it's worth bringing this up because a lot of people, when they're working by themselves from their homes or in their studios, or maybe with a small team, it can feel like it's something that you're doing, but actually it's part of a wider picture. So the Consumer Confidence Index, this is if you know me, you know I love a graph. But the Consumer Confidence Index is basically an index where a set number of consumers are surveyed, and they're asked about how optimistic they're feeling about the next 12 months. And what you can see here is that this is us right here. This is the February figure, I believe. And you can see that during the pandemic, it was generally low to begin with, then it picked right up, and then it's dropped down again. And there's lots of reasons for that. We're going to talk more about cost of living, inflation, price increases in a little bit. But of course, geopolitical events, everything that's happening in Ukraine, the continuing effects of the pandemic, that's all playing into this as well. And the good news is that it's forecast to improve towards the end of the year. So there's definitely an element of kind of hang on, hang in there. But I think that it's really important to recognize that consumers in general, it's not everybody, but the general feeling is that people's confidence is low. So what does this mean for your business? That's always the question that we have to come back to. It's very interesting, Catherine. Thank you for the nice graph, but what does this actually mean for me and for my business? So I think the key thing here is really understanding that the customer is feeling low confidence. It has a specific impact on purchasing for sure. It has this really big impact on purchases of bigger items like houses, cars, furniture, things like that. But the key thing really is that it has a general overall impact on how much people want to spend. And it has it means that, and you can probably think about it in your own life, when you're feeling a little bullish, when you're feeling good about the amount of money that you have, and if you see something you like, you're going to be like, yes, I'm going to get it. Whereas when you're feeling a little cautious and not sure and concerned about rising cost of living and everything else, then you probably are going to be more considered in your purchasing. So it's almost like you have to think about your customer and how you are talking to them about your products and the messaging that you have to use. I think as well, again, anecdotally talking to people, some people have said to me, you know, I've done a launch, normally it's been like this, but I've done exactly the same thing, but it's had I've had fewer results. I do honestly think that repetition, which is something that a lot of people worry about under normal circumstances, I think it's going to become even more important, because it's almost like you have to say something a few more times to get people's attention. And also you have to be persuasive. So I always say that when you're talking to your customer, it's like they've got their money in the palm of their hand, and you have to give them the messages and talk to them in a way that persuades them to open up their hand and give their money to you. Now, when consumer confidence is lower, it's like the money's clenched really, really tightly. So you have to think about that persuasive. It's about reassurance. It's about persuasion more than ever. And it's also about occasions. Now, occasions are things like birthdays, christenings. It's about things like Mother's Day, which we're about to hit, obviously Father's Day, Christmas, dare I say it. And they become more important when confidence is low, because you can think about it like, again, with all of these, if you're not sure if you get what I'm saying, think about it from your own life. When you don't have a huge amount of discretionary income, or you're being a bit more cautious about your discretionary income, then you will maybe not buy something just on a whim. But if it's your friend's birthday or your child's birthday, then you absolutely will still buy for them. So it's almost like in your business, in product businesses, and in the businesses that I've worked in over the last 22 years, because this isn't the first time that we've hit low consumer confidence, believe me, in the last 22 years. Then it's like when we're at that low ebb, it's almost like a bigger focus on those occasions works well, because that is going to be that trigger to purchase. And then the other thing that when I was putting this talk together and I was thinking about, what are the real key things that I want to convey to you? What are the things that I really want you to think about when you leave this talk? What can you take away? And I think empathy is one of the biggest ones. And that is really putting yourself in your customer's shoes. If you feel stuck, if you're sitting here thinking, I don't really know what to say to my customer, draw yourself a little mind map. I draw like a little stick figure and a thought bubble coming out, and I say, what are they thinking about right now? And start putting yourself in their shoes. Sometimes it works really nicely as well to write something from the first person. Imagine you are your customer. Then you're going to start writing in the first person, like right now, I'm waiting to hear what my new energy bill is going to be. I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. I'm worried about whether or not I'm going to get a holiday this year, or worried about if I'm going to get COVID again, whatever it is you might be. But just really thinking about where your customer is, because the most important conversation that happens when you're selling products, services, anything really, is the conversation that's happening inside your customer's head. So all it takes is a small amount of you empathizing with them, and you're able to really make them feel seen, heard, understood. And that can go an awful long way, especially when people are feeling concerned and worried. So it could be that, you talk about, I know right now, you want to really focus on making every penny count. This is how many extra wears you're going to get out of our clothes because they're higher quality. This is the kind of value you get from buying from us. Basically really focusing it in on what are they thinking about right now, and in what way can you solve problems for them or brighten their day. I mean, don't underestimate the power actually of people wanting to purchase things. People will still purchase small treats for themselves. There's a whole theory called the lipstick effect, which is when times are tough, people buy small treats for themselves, like lipstick, to cheer themselves up. So there's definitely lots of room, especially for small businesses, to have items that do brighten people's day and bring them joy, solve problems for them. But you've got to start by thinking about where your customer is right now. And the people I've seen who've done the best over the last couple of years have constantly asked themselves, what are my customers thinking about right now? What do they need? How can I show them something that shows that I'm listening and I'm thinking about them? Because we all want that, don't we? Okay, so Sarah, I see you've put here about it's hard to keep talking when you're low sales. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on, but I totally hear you. And I think that that's partly one of the reasons why I wanted to have the talk, because I do think a lot of people take it quite personally. But when you look at things like that consumer confidence index, you can see that the customers are just, it's not you, it's them, or it's us, right? We're all customers as well, aren't we? As well as business owners. So it's trying very much to not take it personally, but instead to put yourself in this place of curiosity. How can I help them? How can I put myself in their shoes? Okay, so the second thing impacting is rising prices. Now, this really does go hand in hand with consumer confidence, because it's one of the reasons that consumers are feeling concerned at the moment. So it certainly plays into the two things. This is the latest, I think they just published these figures yesterday. UK inflation 6.2% in February. You can see it's way above Bank of England target. The Chancellor had his statement yesterday. First reaction suggests that a lot of people don't think he's done particularly much to combat inflation, so it is definitely something on people's minds. To say as well that people, when I was looking at the figures preparing for this session, people are still buying. The consumer spending is still out there. It's just slightly masked by the fact that these higher prices and the inflation is pushing things up, which means that potentially people are buying slightly less in volume, but it looks like they're still buying the same amount because the price per item's gone up slightly, if that makes sense. So what does this mean for your business? Well, first off, what does it mean for you as a business owner? It means you need to double check everything. If you haven't run your costs recently, I definitely suggest that you do so. Better the devil you know. Make sure that I would say if you haven't checked all of your costs in the last 3 months, I would look again, because one of the issues that small businesses have is that they often get different invoices at different costs, and it's quite hard to track sometimes when costs are going up. So make sure that you're not sleepwalking into a situation where your margins have gone down and you didn't know about it. The other thing I would suggest then is double check your competitors' prices, because I've had a few conversations with people and they said, oh, I can't possibly put my prices up. Then they've gone away and looked at what their competitors are doing and realized their competitors have actually already moved their prices up. So where they thought that they didn't have any room to maneuver, they were actually slightly behind the market. So it's definitely worth double checking that, because we're all in the same boat when it comes to price increases. Absolutely everybody. The British Retail Consortium, when I was pulling together the article I write for Forbes each year on the trends, retail trends coming up in the next year, I get to ask lots of experts about what they think is happening. The British Retail Consortium basically said, prices are going up, you have to have a plan for it. So again, you're not alone in this. So it is it's a little more nuanced. Like, you have to think, where can you nudge prices up? Where is your customer just going to have a, sort of put their foot down and that's going to be it? I think there's got to be a lot of experimentation around pricing. But then the other thing to remember is that you've got a cautious customer who's worried about increasing costs. And it's now more than ever important to remember that people don't buy based on price, they buy based on value. So what is the value? It doesn't necessarily equate to something being cheap. Good value means that they believe the price that they're paying is the right price for that product and they are getting good value. I like to express it as this value triangle. So I think it's made up of 3 different elements when it comes to value. You've got the price, that's certainly an element to whether or not somebody thinks what they're buying is good value. The example that I give with this often is that if you think about pens, you can have a pen that is a disposable throwaway pen and it costs £1. And that seems to be like excellent value for what it is, because it works, it's going to last you for a certain amount of time, and then that seems like good value. On the other hand, you can have a fountain pen that is £65, but because that's much higher quality, because that could be something that's really giftable, something that you believe you're going to have for a really long time, and maybe it's just really beautiful and desirable, then that will also be considered as good value by the customer. So it's not necessarily to do with the price, it's to do with the value. So at times like this, I would strongly urge you to think about your messaging and think about how you communicate. Again, going back to what you're putting yourself in your customer's shoes, then I think that you want to really think about how you can communicate to them the quality of the materials that you use, the quality of maybe the process of actually making it. So if it's handmade or made in small batches or a highly skilled factory, for example, those are all things that really play into quality. And then desirability, that's about knowing what your customer wants. If you can get something that they just absolutely love, then that's just always going to help, because that's going to help them make that decision to purchase. And it also gives you a little bit more of a wiggle room with price. We've probably all been there where you've seen something, you just loved it, and you thought, right, well, if it's about this price, I might buy it. And you've just kind of been a little bit more open to spending a little bit more. So thinking about your value and really thinking about your messaging around your value, I think is going to be absolutely crucial to kind of meeting your customer where they are right now. Okay, so moving on, number 3 then, online evolving. So if you look at the graph of the percentage of sales that happen online as a percentage of the total retail spend, So this basically tells you that for every £1 spent in retail, what percentage or how many pence, if you like, was spent online. And it starts way back in 2006 at about 4 pence in every £1 being spent online. And then you can see it's sort of been going up gradually over time. And then this bit here is the pandemic. So this is March 2020, where we just went to over, over nearly a third of all sales happening online. And then again, around Christmas time last year, when there was a huge spike because the non-essential retail was shut down. And then you've got 2021, where things reopened and it dipped back down. Just a side note, we're still, if you look at the sort of year-on-year comparison, if you're somebody who sells online and you feel like your sales are down on last year, then if you look, this is sort of around this time last year, this bit here. So you can see that it was much higher than it is currently. And I think that we'll be feeling that effect until probably around April, when things started reopening last year, April 18th, non-essential retail reopened. But the key thing is with this graph as well is that, yes, it explains a lot about why the last couple of years have felt very bumpy, because you can see the peaks and troughs are quite extreme. But you can also see that the point that we finished on here in January 2022 is about 3 years ahead of where we might otherwise have been if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So we have jumped forward quite a long way. And that means that there are demographics buying online who weren't purchasing before. And it means that there were product types that have been purchased online that typically or historically weren't really purchased online before. So it's kind of pushed us forward about 3 years. Some experts think it's pushed grocery, for example, forward 5 years. So what it's done is just meant that digital, as we know how important it is, but it's really just about how we embrace that as business owners and continue to make the most out of our digital presence, whether or not you have a physical space as well. The other thing I think that it's done is that from everything that I've been reading, and I don't know if any of you listen to my podcast, but for example, last week I was talking to somebody about the metaverse, which I know is like mind-blowing for a lot of small businesses, or like, for goodness sakes, I've just got myself a website, let alone all of this crazy stuff. But I think what if you look forward, I think the way that online selling is going is at the very, very least, you can say that it's becoming a lot more interactive and a lot less about static imagery and a lot more focused on video content. Now, if you're on Instagram, you will have seen that static imagery, generally speaking, has had a much lower reach, and that things like Reels have in comparison had more organic reach as well. Every single platform is pushing short form video content, whether that's Instagram with Reels, whether that's TikTok, which basically just is short form video content, YouTube introducing YouTube Shorts, Pinterest introducing Pinterest idea pins and video pins. So everyone is really embracing this video content. And I do honestly think if you're selling products in 2022, you need to really either start embracing it, or at the very, very least, start thinking about how it can work for you. The good news is the barriers to entry are reasonably low. I did one of these talks once, and I think I used an image like this, which is effectively a stock image, but they said, is this what you need to get started doing video content? And I would say probably it's even a little over complicated. She's got a ring light, she's got a microphone. You don't even need those. You just need your phone and maybe a window behind you to get some natural light. That's literally all you need. So on the one hand, it's really great because video content is accessible pretty much to everyone with a phone. But I know that it's also something that a lot of people have a mental barrier around. And I think, but if I'm being really honest, I think that when it comes to selling online, it's going to just keep moving more and more towards video. Even if we don't end up in the metaverse quite yet, which is basically sort of an immersive platform where people, big retailers, if you want to know what big retailers are spending their money on this year, it's on working out how to kind of get into these virtual spaces and setting up virtual stores and all kinds of stuff. But I think at the very, very least is thinking about, for small businesses, it's thinking about, okay, well, how can I embrace video? How can I use it? and start thinking about, just keep your eyes and ears open for examples of people doing things in the metaverse and what that might even mean for you. I mean, I do think it's slightly generational, because I think that Gen Z, who are, you know, real digital natives, and they're all very comfortable spending. If anyone's got kids of sort of, you know, like older kids, young teens type thing, they're all comfortable spending real world money on digital assets. If it's something like, you know, outfits for their avatars and games, like that's the kind of thing that is going to move forward, people being comfortable spending actual money in a digital, for something that only exists in the digital space. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I think it's just about thinking about the opportunities moving forward, and then just thinking about video. Like, are you doing video? Can you try it? If you've tried it and it didn't really react too well, can you just try something different? Behind the scenes process videos, could be your hands, doesn't have to be your face if that's like just a bridge too far. But just be aware that in general, if you're talking about selling online, video is just becoming more and more important. And then the next step after that, live streaming. And I've been having great fun actually on TikTok. If you're ever on TikTok, watch some people doing live streaming, because it's really fascinating. It's like a mini QVC, but people are selling to their audience and trying to make it also that sense of occasion, and getting something, you know, like actually watching people pick out your products, or like doing lucky dips and things like that. So it's something to think about, but I think it's also really important to recognize if it's feeling static, or if it's feeling like you're not moving forward, like just there's so much out there that's it's kind of moving in this direction, and what can you do to try it? I don't know if I'm going to if I convinced anybody to try video. I mean, ultimately you can try it and see what happens. Okay. Oh, and one more thing just to say about video, it is excellent for selling products, because let's use one of my earrings as an example. It's so much easier for me to explain everything about this earring to you, and to show you the back and the front and how it looks and all the rest of it. That is actually a really powerful way of selling that a bunch of static imagery on the website really struggles to replicate. So I actually think video and products works really, really well together. Okay, so conscious consumerism, this is another really big factor. Just again, to really keep this in mind, that what is encouraging people to buy in 2022, people are concerned about their budgets, they are feeling nervous, but they are more and more wanting to shop with businesses that share their values. So some statistics for you. The Co-op ran research that said that the green pound, or people purchasing specifically with environmental concerns in mind, had reached over £1 billion for the first time in the UK. Boston Consulting Group research shows that 90% of consumers are more concerned in 2022 about the sustainability and the environmental impact of their products than ever before. Shopify show that customers are 4 times more likely to buy from businesses that have strong values that they talk about, and 77% of people are concerned about the environmental impact of what they're buying. So these are really big numbers. So basically it's gone completely mainstream, and really I know a lot of small businesses are built on these sustainability, on the sort of minimizing your impact, minimizing your environmental impact. A lot of people are values-based and purpose-driven businesses. So the key thing really is talk about it. So as much as you possibly can, are you explaining this to your customers? Really has to be a big part of marketing messaging in 2022. And then again, thinking about, because in the same way that the internet is moving on and becoming something different to what it was before, I think conscious consumerism is actually moving on too, in terms of, it used to be that when you had, you know, organic cotton or recycled packaging, then that was seen as a plus. And now it's seen as almost like the base level. And if you're not doing that, it's a negative. And I think the next step is going to be focusing on regenerative. So people, for example, planting trees for people purchasing from them. but also things like circularity as well. So resale, for example, in clothing is growing at 7 times the rate of the standard clothing market. So there's a lot of evidence that people are looking. Resale also, which is effectively sort of curated secondhand, if you like. It fits really well around concerns about pricing and things like that. Lots and lots of businesses are looking at ways of trying to build circularity into their business model, whether that's if something breaks, encouraging people to send it back to them to be mended, whether it's actually incorporating resale into your own website. So if you're a clothing company, there are now apps and software that's available that will allow you to start reselling your own products to your customers, as opposed to them having to go through a market like Depop or eBay, for example. So again, thinking about at the very least, are you communicating enough to your customer about your values and talking to them about what they are? And number 2, thinking about circularity moving forward. Okay. So the final one then to talk about is acquisition and organic reach getting more complex. Now, some of this is I'd say anecdotal. Some of this is to do with talking to lots of businesses about how things are going. But I think that this is one of the reasons why it has felt quite tricky. It'd be interesting to know if anyone here has felt this as well. So last year we had the update to iOS 14, which basically was an argument between Facebook and Apple. And it meant that they made some changes to the attribution to ads. In 2020, some people had a big advantage in terms of their ads were working really well. They were able to acquire new customers really easily. And then I think people who really built their businesses out on that, some of them found it harder in 2021. I think also organic reach, again, anecdotally, especially if you were heavily relying on Instagram. I've heard a lot about how people's organic Instagram reach has dropped, although again, I do think that comes back slightly to the video element as well. If you were someone who was getting really great reach with static images, over time you found that people have found that they've had to almost like replace that with video content to get anything like what they were doing before. So those two things combined together, I think, mean that we, again, like a shift in strategies, a shift in mindset. And where I've seen it work really well for people is focusing on retention. And I can't tell you how many times I get sent research and information that basically says, you know, retention is the new acquisition. This is what big retailers, this is what the retail industry in general is almost admitting and saying, like, it's all about retaining your loyal customers. To be honest, it's been something I've been saying for a long time, that nobody's more likely to buy from you than someone who's already bought from you. So you do definitely want to make sure you're focusing on those warmer customers, because that is where the money is in a retail business, is in your repeat customers, because they don't cost you anything to acquire. You've already acquired them, and they're more likely to buy from you. They're more likely to spend more when they buy from you. They're less likely to return things or complain. They're just generally better customers for you to have. But it was really interesting. So I don't know if anyone else has been served this ad, but Shopify themselves, you know, global platform supporting millions of product businesses. Shopify was running an ad in Instagram that said this ad is half as effective as it used to be last year, or something like that, which I just thought was quite eye-opening. They were promoting their report on the future of commerce, which, if you want to read it, it's 149 pages long. It's actually very interesting. But a big piece of that was about the same thing. It's all about retention. It's all about your customers. It's about building communities. It's about having conversations with them. It's about spending time nurturing those warm audiences. So ask yourself these questions. How are you splitting your time and budget between retention and acquisition? Are you using warm audiences to their full advantage? So, for example, if you've not started email marketing, it's something that you can incorporate. I would highly recommend it. And I think as well, there's an element to which this year, more than ever, is requiring that we experiment. If you were spending most of your time on Instagram, have you tried video content? Have you tried TikTok? Have you tried doing more PR, for example? Have you tried different sales channels? So if I were to say who that I've spoken to has kind of had it, and nobody's had an easy ride, don't get me wrong, The people who I think have found it the easiest, or have kind of have had the fewest bumps in the road, it has a lot of the time been about they've got maybe wholesale as well as direct to consumer. So when one drops down, they can lean more heavily on the other one. They've really thought about where their customer is and what their customer needs at this time. And they've just tried things. And then if they've not worked, they've tried other things. They've tried new messaging, they've tried new content, and they've keep going after those green shoots. Because I think ultimately that's what this is about. It's about there have been some shifts and changes, and it's about not taking it personally and about keep trying. Okay, so just to wrap things up then, 7 steps to move forward. So what would I suggest if we were sitting face to face, one-to-one? These are some of the things that I would suggest that you do in order to help you move forward in 2022. Number 1, be really, really sure that you understand your customers. Spend the time talking to them if you haven't spoken to them recently. Talk to them about what is going on for them and really put yourself in their shoes. Number 2, look at your value. Go back to the value triangle. Are you communicating that in everything that you do, in your messaging, in your on your product pages, on your emails, your about page? Are you talking about value? Is there anything more that you can do to really tell that story about the value that you're giving your customers? Value and values. So number 3, getting clear on your values. Again, same thing. Are you communicating not just the value to your customer, but also the things that you believe in? Loyal customers, if you haven't already put a special focus on them, then I would definitely have a look at that this year, because I think that it will definitely stand a lot of people in good stead, building those relationships, those communities. And again, nobody's more likely to buy from you than someone who's already bought from you. So think about where you're spending your time. Number 5, keep testing, test everything, your channels, your messaging, your products. Number 6, Christmas. I know it's March. I know it is crazy to talk about Christmas in March, but it is not unheard of for a small business to be getting 55 to 60% of their entire year's sales in the 6-week run up to Christmas. So again, especially if the rest of the year is going to be a bit bumpy, you want to make sure you're not missing out on those occasions. Remember, occasions get more important when people get feel less confident. So it's really important that you're ready for the big one. The summer's a great time to be starting to think about it, making sure you've got your products ready, pitching for long lead press. If you're on something like Not on the High Street, they'll be doing their selections probably in April and May for the Christmas campaigns. So it does sound crazy, but it's actually not so crazy. And then the final point I just wanted to make was, one of the most important jobs that you can do is manage your own mindset and try as much as humanly possible to remain in that state of curiosity and not get into that fear and freeze. So again, this is not the first time that we've been through low consumer confidence or rising costs. It has happened before. And I think the key thing is that there's always 2 reactions you can have. You can be frozen and fearful, which, let's face it, nobody would blame you if you felt like that, because that's kind of the way things have been going. A lot of us are on our lowest ebb at the moment, so that's not any big surprise if that is how you feel. But you do owe it to yourself and to your business to stay curious as much as possible, because the other response is, okay, well, what's going on here? What can we do? And where are the opportunities? Because there are always opportunities, even if they're not immediately apparent. And as Sarah mentions the cycle of doom, as I affectionately call it. This is something that happens to a lot of businesses. They have slower sales, they get loss of confidence, so they take less action, so the sales slow down, they lose confidence, they take less action. That is a very real phenomenon for a lot of people, so it's well worth you being aware of that in yourself and in your business. And I like to think of it as building strength, though as much as it can feel difficult. Imagine if you get this right now, if you get how to talk to the customer when they're not feeling confident, if you get how to be super persuasive, or if persuasive feels overly manipulative, if you just get really good at explaining your value and how you can help your customers, it's only going to make things so much easier for you when things are a little bit lighter, as it were, a little bit easier. And so if you think about this as like you're building your strength to move forward, I think the other thing as well to remember that people do genuinely want to support small businesses as well. I know it can feel very daunting with all of these different things going on, but the number of people who have really taken on board that shopping small is something good about them, that has really increased over time. And I think as a result, yes, maybe there are spending constraints, but people are more and more choosing to spend that limited money that they have with small and independent brands and local brands in particular. The kind of impact of people wanting to shop local and support local businesses has just been seen throughout the pandemic, and it's not stopping now. So although it feels daunting, I think there's still opportunities there. And people do still buy, don't forget that. People still spending money. It's not like it's totally ground to a halt. So in conclusion, preparing for 2022, it's been another challenging year, but you're not alone. Just really want to highlight that, because it can feel really daunting if you're there and you think, oh, well, it must just be my products. But actually there's bigger forces at play here, and it's really worthwhile remembering that. People still want to support small businesses, so don't be afraid to shout about how you're a small business. Don't pretend you're bigger than you are. Really tap into your local community. Value is increasingly important, so how are you communicating that? And keep testing, keep trying new things, keep trying different product types, different messaging, all different things. Basically try and stay as curious as you can to try and find the way forward. Okay, so just at this point, I like to take just a couple of minutes of your time to, before we do questions, to tell you about an exciting opportunity to join the club. I'd love to invite those of you who are not already members, I know there are lots of members here today, to join over 300 other product businesses inside our private community, like-minded businesses where we can support and cheer you on. I'm in the group every day, Monday to Friday, answering questions, and we also do twice a month Ask Me Anythings. And because I can't think of a better way to show you what incredible value you get in the club, I am, for the first time ever, doing a 7-day free trial for new members. So if you're not a member, you can sign up and get your first 7 days completely free, full access to everything in the club, our full library of courses, supportive and friendly Facebook group, and our events as well. So next week we're doing an April planning event where we go through together and look at how March went and put together concrete plans for April, as well as allowing you to meet other people and ask them questions. And yeah, if after you that, it's £32 a month. You get a library of courses, 4 live sessions a month. So for example, next month we've got a workshop coming up as well with Lucy Hitchcock on TikTok. She went viral with her business, Partners in Wine. So I'm really excited to hear what she's going to tell us about trying TikTok for your product business. The month after that, we've got product photography tips, and then we're going to have a legal expert as well talking to us all about the all-important T's and C's. And we've got our supportive community as well, running a private Facebook group. It is no minimum sign up required. You don't have to sign up for a number of months. There's no questions asked. So if you come, you join, and you decide it's not for you, there's no hard feelings. If you cancel before the 7 days, it will be completely free. So you can either sign up at resilientretailclub.com, or you can wait for the email that will come out after this, and I'll put all of the information in there too. But there we go. That's enough about me. This is a little bit more about where you can find me, but I would love to dive right in to the questions. So let's go to the Q&A. And don't forget, if you put a question in the chat, I probably won't see it because I can already see like the chats zooming around in the chat. It'll be tough for me to scroll back. So if you don't mind just copying that question and dropping it into the Q&A, I will go. Okay, Harrison asks, how do you think cryptocurrency will affect retail? That's a really interesting question. I know that a lot of businesses are experimenting with whether or not they will accept cryptocurrency for items. I don't know. I think it's, you know, a majority at the moment, it's like a payment method. I know that a lot of people big retailers are experimenting with how many different payment methods they offer as a way of improving conversion. So one of the interesting ones that was talked about a lot last year was buy now, pay later, for example, as a payment method. But now I feel like it can work, you know, to help people spread out payments, but then there's obviously concerns about, you know, will people overspend? I don't know. I think initially cryptocurrency will be one of those things that we'll have to wait and see. Do consumers, I think it'll be consumer led. Do more and more consumers want to pay using cryptocurrency? So we'll see what happens from there. I think in a way, one of the bigger impacts on retail industry will be blockchain technology in general, because I think that it will help with a lot of things like where people are trying to work out where stuff comes from. Improvements in blockchain technology means that there can be more transparency about where something's sourced from beginning to end. At the moment, there's a lot of complexity in the supply chain, especially something like cotton, for example. It goes through so many different stages, from harvesting to processing to being spun, being woven, all those different things, and it's quite hard to actually trace it through. So I think that some of the technologies associated with cryptocurrency, like blockchain, will have an impact. But in terms of day-to-day businesses, I think it's going to be a question of, are we going to get to a tipping point where we think the customer really wants to pay in crypto, in which case then that will be a decision that people add it, I think, as a form of payment, just like they would for like PayPal, that kind of thing. Okay. Let me just answer that. Done. Okay, Alice says, when it comes to live selling on TikTok and Instagram, do you know any brands that do it well? I've tried, but I don't know how to make it fun for customers without offering big discounts. I'll be totally honest with you. The ones that I've seen quite a few crystal sellers, people doing it, selling crystals, and quite a lot of people. I've actually saw one which was like pick a mix, which is actually quite, you know, compelling to watch. I think the thing with live selling is there's a couple of different ways of doing it. I think it can be good as part of a launch. So as you're launching something, you're almost giving them like a full walkthrough. People who do that well, there's a lot of vintage sellers actually do that really well. They do like a live sale where they're talking through a whole collection, because they will often do like a drop or a collection of items. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but the other thing to think about, so today's podcast, for example, is with a guy called Chris Lamontagne, who runs Spring, which is a creator platform where basically people who are creators, it's kind of like create on demand or print on demand, they might create items. So his take on live selling was it was often about having something that you could only get during the live stream. So could it be, for example, instead of offering a discount, could you have something where it was like, I'm just going to have a few of these and they're only going to be available if you come along to the live stream? I think that could be an interesting thing to try. But I do think it's a way of kind of just trying, seeing what happens. But I agree, I don't think it always has to be about discounting. It shouldn't be, really. Okay. What is a good returning customer rate, Catherine? I know it can vary hugely, but is there a general trend that's seen as good to aim for? I mean, I think it's kind of one of those slightly how long is a piece of string thing, Susan, but the only thing I would say is that generally somewhere between 20 and 40% I think is seen as a good benchmark for your returning customer. Much lower than that, and that seems quite low, and much higher than that I suppose you have to ask, are you getting enough new customers in? So somewhere in that 20 to 40 range. Oh, I missed one, sorry. Victoria says, I sell handmade jewellery and key rings. Many people are one-off customers as they tend to buy as gifts. I get a few return customers, but not many, possibly due to what I sell. So how do I try and get more return customers? Well, Victoria, I would argue that if somebody buys things as gifts, I don't know about you, but if I find somewhere that's good for gifts, then I will quite often come back to them. So it's almost like if you know that it's a nice gift and people like it, like we've all got multiple people in our lives that we buy gifts for. I think then I would wonder if you using email marketing, for example. That's definitely one way to get returning customers. There are lots of different things you can incentivize as well. So like bounce back offers. So if somebody orders from you, can you put in a little offer for a small discount if next time they order, for example. But I definitely don't feel like if people are buying for gifts that it's necessarily going to be a one-off purchase. I think it's probably about and also if they bought from you for a birthday, would they buy from you at Christmas, things like that. So just thinking about, once you've kind of interacted with somebody, how can you offer them other things, encourage them to come back, whether it's showing them newness, whether it's saying, you know, sending out an email that says, have you got any birthdays coming up this month? Here are our best sellers for birthdays, or whatever it might be, but just really kind of engaging with them. And I definitely wouldn't assume that a gift item meant that they weren't going to be repeat customers. Probably the biggest issue for repeat customers is if you're selling wedding dresses and even then, you know, you can work on word of mouth recommendations and things like that. Okay, done that. Is Pinterest an effective tool to use? I think that, yeah, I definitely do know of several people who get a good amount of traffic to their websites through Pinterest. I think generally speaking, you get a lower conversion rate from Pinterest traffic. But that said, the good thing about Pinterest is that it's not really a social media platform. It's really more of a search functionality, like an image-based, yeah, it's basically a search engine of images. And the other thing as well is that people are on Pinterest to research their purchases. Like, again, if you think about how you personally use Pinterest in your life, not even necessarily in your business, then likelihood is that you are doing it because you're renovating your kitchen, or you're going on holiday, or you're thinking about ideas for your garden. So people do use Pinterest to research purchases. So it does definitely have a really strong affinity to product businesses. And of course, product businesses have lovely images, so it definitely can still work. And then there's now idea pins, but you can definitely experiment with putting, you know, a reel. If you've done a reel, why not try uploading it to Pinterest as an idea pin and see what happens? Jen Stanbuck, you're lots in the chat. Pinterest is evergreen. Great, yeah. Great one, bringing traffic to you forever. Okay, what do you think about loyalty programs for focusing on loyal customers? Are they helpful? Yes, absolutely, 100%. I definitely think loyalty programs are a great option if you don't have one. There's a great podcast episode I did with Fiona Stevens from Loyalty Line. I can't remember off the top of my head what number it is. I feel like it's something like number 42, because I feel like this has come up before. But I think loyalty is really loyalty programs can be really good at engaging your customers, and I don't think they have to necessarily be about discounts or money off. I think they can be about, you know, what does your customer want? What would be a nice reward for them? Sometimes they just want more access. They just want content, or they want access to you know, early releases and things like that. So yes, definitely. Loyalty Lion is a plugin that works with Shopify. I'm pretty sure they've got a free version. So yeah, no, I definitely think that it's worth thinking about it. Right, I just want to have a quick look. I had a question here from somebody who pre-submitted a question, and I don't want to miss it. So Sophie had sent via email, she'd said that she sells scrapbooks and wall decals, and she's not really sure whether to go with more wall decals and more home, or whether to go with more scrapbooks because the scrapbooks sell. But I would say that, so her question was about whether or not she should try and sort of hone in on one or the other. But I mean, I would say that it's not like a massive product range. You've got wall decals and scrapbooks. I do think you have to listen to the customer to a certain extent. If they're still buying scrapbooks from you, is there anything you can build out around that, around actual scrapbooking itself? I mean, that's like a whole other, like, there's so many products in those categories. But then wall decals, if those are also working and that's what you feel really passionate about, like, can you trial some more home items as well? I think the two items sit together quite nicely, and you could build out you could definitely try, and this is where I think trialing is so important in this year. I mean, it's important every year, but in this year as well, you know, try some extra home things and see how they go. What would complement the wall decals? Definitely think about building out, like if someone's going to buy a wall decal from you, what else might they need to go with that? And maybe just purchase a few items from another brand that you can just test it to see whether or not it works. See what the reaction is from your customer, and if it doesn't work, then no big deal, you've not spent a huge amount of money, but if it does work, then it gives you a new direction. So I think sometimes when you feel stuck, you have to just try things, because you can sit and think about things all day long, but ultimately you want to see what happens when you put it in front of the customer. Okay, Joy says, how much of my time should I really be spending on marketing? Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, it kind of depends where you're at. You know, like if you're really busy fulfilling orders, you're going to have to spend more time on that. If you're sitting there and you're not getting the orders that you want, then you're going to have to ramp up the amount of time you spend on marketing. Apologies if that sounds really obvious, but I think that some people say it should be as much as 40% of your time spent on marketing. I mean, I don't know, it depends how much you're spending now. I think the key thing with marketing is that just be really careful, especially if you're on social media. Sometimes people tell me that they spend, you know, forever marketing their business, but what they actually mean is that when they go onto Instagram, they get really sucked in, and then they end up spending ages on there and like replying to comments or like, you know, like having chats with people, and it's not really going anywhere. So I think the key thing with marketing is not just how much time you spend, but how effective you are. I think, you know, making sure that you're spending time to create content, making sure that if you know that you find it hard to be consistent, maybe you spend one day a month scheduling content, at least some of it, so you know that there's some stuff going out. But I think ultimately, if your sales aren't where you want them to be, then you will have to up the amount of time that you're spending on your marketing. And even if you're busy, this is the thing, I know it's busy, it's tough, because some people tell me that they get really busy and then they don't have time to do marketing and then the sales drop down. So is there a sort of base minimum that you can always do no matter how busy you are, and then be flexible depending on whether or not you're busy with orders or need to spend more time doing marketing? Would you recommend a particular social media scheduler like Hootsuite or any other one? I think Hootsuite's fairly decent. Personally, for Instagram, I use Planoly. I just think it works really well. It just does Instagram though. I have used Hootsuite in the past, and I can't honestly remember why I switched, but I remember I liked it at the time. The other one that I use, but doesn't work for Instagram, is something called Meet Edgar, and that allows you to schedule recurring posts, but that's very particular to my business. I would say as well, don't forget you can actually schedule stuff through Facebook. Facebook will allow you to schedule, I believe, Instagram posts, definitely Facebook posts. So you can, there's an element of which you can do scheduling in the platforms themselves, but otherwise I'd say I've been using Instagram, Planoly for Instagram for ages, and I'm very happy with it. Are product subscriptions mentioned as a trend for 2022? That's a really great question, Liz. I mean, I do definitely think that the move towards building in recurring income into your business it's been going for a while, and it's still going. I don't know that it has come up necessarily specifically as a trend, like everyone has to have a subscription box, but I do know that there are more and more people doing them, and it's something that the customer's more and more accustomed to seeing. So again, as with anything, like, can you trial it and see what happens? Because recurring income certainly does get you around the issue of acquisition being harder. So I think, you know, it could be something to consider. In the membership, we had a chat, a couple, well, must have been like late last year, with somebody who all about how to start a subscription box. That's in the course portal for the replays. Do you think I should have my own website or stick with Etsy? I mean, I think personally at some point most people are going to need their own website. And by the way, guys, I just realized it is after 12 o'clock. So if you do have to go, then as I said, I'm happy to stay here and answer questions. Just I do appreciate that it's, you know, that's, people have other things they need to do, but don't worry, it's all being recorded, as I said, and so you can have that in the replay. You can watch the replay if you have to dash. And thank you for being here. Do you think you should have my own website or stick with Etsy? I think ultimately most people are going to need their own website, because everything that we talked about in terms of retention and building loyalty and everything else is very hard, almost impossible to do if you're selling through a third-party platform, because the third-party platform owns that relationship with the customer, not you. That said, you know, Etsy is a great place to get started if it's working for you as a revenue stream. In an ideal world, you would have both running alongside one another. I know lots of people watching today, for example, have both Etsy as well as their own website. So absolutely, you could have both, and then you kind of gradually, slowly over time want to encourage, whenever you're pointing somebody to your business, you want to be pointing them to your own website, and then Etsy being the traffic that you're getting organically. Would you always recommend a loyalty program, or are there situations where you wouldn't? I'm trying to think of why you wouldn't have a loyalty program. I mean, unless, I do think perhaps, so I'm just going to sip my drink. Unless you're in an area where, a product area where you know that you're very unlikely to get repeat customers, like weddings, for example. But even then, you might still have like a referral program where you would give like a, I don't know, like a gift or a cash rebate if somebody recommended you to somebody else or something like that. Why wouldn't you have a loyalty program? I mean, the only thing I could think of was if it was costing you so much money to run it, but then a lot of them you can get free versions. So I think you just got to try it, to be honest. I can't really think of why you wouldn't want to have a loyalty program, because your best customers are always your loyal customers are always the best customers. As everything is going up in price, would you recommend putting prices up or trying to keep them low? I think we all have to make that decision. I think that we all have to do what's right for us in our business. If there is a way that you can, let's say you had really, really great, amazing margins and you were awash with cash, and there was a way that you could get away with absorbing some of those rising prices so that you didn't pass them on, then great. You know, more power to you. If you can hold the prices where they are, or if in fact you're not seeing increasing prices because of the, you know, because whatever reason, because of the materials that you're using are not one that's gone up, although almost everything's gone up, including cardboard. So, you know, just even the boxes you send stuff out in have gone up in price. You know, if you can absorb it, great. But I think that if this is going to tip you from being profitable to being unprofitable, or really going to cause you problems in the business, then you don't have much of a choice. You're going to have to increase the prices. But, you know, I think you can experiment. I think you can try eking them up. You can also make the decision, do you want to kind of do a big fanfare and tell your customers that you're increasing prices, or would you prefer to just do it and see what their reaction is? If even anyone notices. I mean, I don't even know if people will, to be honest. I think, or at the very least, they'll be like, oh, prices gone up, but they've gone up everywhere. So I think you have to run your numbers. You have to know your numbers. And if you really think you can get away with it without increasing your prices, then great. But I think for most people, what you don't want to do is sleepwalk into a situation where, you know, it's trickier. You're in a tricky situation for the business. All right. Joanna says, I've had to pause and reset a few aspects of my business, did a mini rebrand, worked on a few new products and the marketing campaign for it. I've definitely been MIA for the past few months of working behind the scenes. It's gone to the point where I feel quite frozen with the thought that I can't pick up from where I've left off, that the buzz will be gone and my brand will start to be forgotten. My question is, how can I make my comeback as effective as possible? I mean, I think that you're not alone there. I think a lot of people do get that feeling like, oh, I just haven't said anything, and people are going to be like, you know, where's she been, or what's she been up to, or I feel really, you know, awkward about it. I think the most important thing to remember is that people aren't, in the nicest possible way, and this is not aimed at you specifically, this is aimed at all of us, and it's something I tell myself, you know, people don't actually care about your business as much, anywhere near as much as you care about your business. So you may feel like that people may be judgmental, but to be honest, people will either be just pleased to see you pop back up. I mean, I've seen this happen so many times with someone, even people I'm on their newsletter, and they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I hadn't sent a newsletter in so long. And honestly, I hadn't even noticed. So I think, you know, you may feel it easier, find it easier to sort of almost have a relaunch. Like if you've didn't, you know, like did a mini rebrand, worked on new products, why not kind of come back with a bang? Why not plan a launch? There's a course in the I know you've joined the membership, so there's a course in the course portal called Love Your Launches. Have a look at that and maybe plan yourself a launch. And I think almost as well, having that structure so that you're building up to something might also help you kind of re-engage and not feel so lost, and not just like you're just sort of turning on your, you know, just popping up again, if that makes sense. You might want to actually structure it as a comeback, or not even a comeback, just new products, new rebrand. Okay, what is the best social platform to focus marketing on right now? And do you have any advice for paid advertising on the platforms? I think that paid advertising, I always say, speak to somebody who is a paid advertising expert. It's very easy to burn through cash with paid advertising if you don't know what you're doing. Or you can take some, I mean, I quite often talk to people at the Ecom Growth Hub for a course on how to run paid advertising, but I don't know that they're still doing that. So even believe it or not, like Facebook, Google, Pinterest, all of them, they all really want you to advertise. So they actually often will give you free, if you contact them, they'll give you a free consultation with someone on how to get started with advertising. The key thing with advertising is to remember that you should only spend the money on advertising you can afford to lose, because there's no guarantees. It's definitely like a whole other, it's like a, you know, it's definitely good to work with someone who's got experience. Anecdotally, it has been harder for people to get results, especially right out of the gate at the moment. So just be aware of that. In terms of social media platforms to be on, I think trial it. You know, try, you know, if you're on Instagram and you're finding it really hard, then some people have been finding a lot of success on TikTok. I think TikTok's still got quite good organic reach, but again, that's all short form video. My guess is if you try short form video on Instagram, you might see your organic reach pick up as well. So I think that it's hard to say which platform is the best to be on, because it all kind of depends where your customer is as well. So think about where your customers spending their time, because if they're on Facebook, you know, be on Facebook, although, you know, Facebook organic reach is really, really low. But just try a few different things. Okay, Rachel says, I keep being asked if I'm going to be making something for Ukraine. I've seen lots of businesses saying all the profits will go to the Red Cross or DEC, but is 10% of the sale price enough? My products are low cost for parts, but high on my time. That's an interesting question, Rachel. Shane, will we get a recording? Yes, we will get a recording, Shane, not to worry. Excuse me, going back to the idea about, are you going to make something for Ukraine? Excuse me, I told you my voice was going to give out at one point. I think that personally, I suggest going with a percentage of your sales price, because I think all profits is a hard one. I mean, you know, you could take your own time out of your profits and then donate your profit after the time that you spent. But I think that 10% is more transparent, 10% of sales cost. And, you know, I think we've got to do what we can. I think it's important to remember, I think it's wonderful how many businesses have raised money for Ukraine, for DEC, for Red Cross. I think that's all really fantastic. But I think that, you know, I would never suggest that you do something that makes you absolutely no money and burns you out, you know, because you could make a charitable donation from your business, if you see what I mean, rather than working really, really hard to create products and then making absolutely no money from it. I think 10% is very generous. I would definitely suggest you check out Work for Good, workforgood.com. They're brilliant. They're a platform that basically allows you to make a donation through your business, and make sure that you've got everything in place that you need to. You need a commercial participation agreement. They recommend doing a percentage of sales as opposed to profit-based. It's simpler and easier. They're a really nice team, and they will help you out. You can set up your commercial participation agreement. I literally just set one up for my own business for DEC this morning. So I know they've got DEC on there, and I know they've got British Red Cross. And then you tell them what percentage of your sales you're donating, when the time period is, if it's off everything or a particular product. And then they put together a little statement for you that you can then put on your sales page, and that's it. And then they will help, you can pay them through the platform and everything. It's super, super simple. I would definitely recommend to anyone thinking about doing charitable donations from your business, I would do it through Work for Good, because I think that they just make it so easy and simple. And I think, you got to do what works for you. I think it's a lovely idea to do something where you're donating a percentage of sales, but I personally, this is my own personal opinion, I think percentage of sales is more transparent than saying all profits. How can we ensure that brick and mortar shops can still have a draw to this new online focused customer? Well, Joanne, there's actually a lot of, I do think that it's recognizing that the online element will be part of the customer journey, and that customer journey could still end in an offline store. If you look at Nearst, Nearst, they're a really fascinating technology company, and they're working on making businesses' inventory searchable, so that if you Google red dress, you don't just get websites that say red dresses to buy. You also see that, within 20-minute walk, there's a shop that has a red dress. So, customers are concerned about their carbon footprint. They don't necessarily want 1 million deliveries a week. They often recognise that shopping from a local shop is not only a great way of supporting the community, but also lowering their carbon footprint. So I feel reasonably hopeful. I think, yes, they are going to be digitally focused, but what that means for a physical shop is that you need to make sure that they understand what you've got in the physical shop, and they can use the online element to do their research and then hopefully come and end their journey in store with you. So it's using the digital to tell people about what you've got in physical, but also grow your reach so that it grows out just the local area. But I think that a lot of people talking about hybrid retail, so it's kind of almost recognizing that most people don't just buy in a store. They'll done an element of digital research first. Somebody else asked about Etsy your own website, which I think I've covered. How to get actual customers onto an email list? To sign up, book at live events gets the odd one, but most of our list members are other makers and friends. That is a great question. I think the part of it, there's a course in the membership called Introduction to Email Marketing. We go into this, how do you actually get people onto your list? But I think in a nutshell, it's thinking about marketing it almost as something desirable, almost as a product in its own right. So thinking about how can you persuade people? Don't be apologetic. Say, this is what you get if you join, and making it something enticing and exciting, and asking people to sign up. You can also do things like say our new products will be launching to our mailing list first. When I worked at Paperchase, for example, we always had, whatever we were doing, whether it was the sale, whether it was special offers, whether it was new product launch, we always gave that first to the mailing list members, because that gave people a reason to join. So are you giving people a reason to join? It doesn't always have to be a discount, although I know a lot of people do that. Anne says, well done getting through this live COVID too. Although not bad, my brain definitely isn't functioning at its best. Thank you, Anne. Have a lie down now. Yeah, I think I will do. Is there a good Shopify plugin app that you know of for referrals and recommending friends? I don't know off the top of my head. I was talking to Awin. I don't know, they're affiliates. I don't know if that's quite the same thing, and I don't know if they plug into Shopify, but not off the top of my head to that one. Charles is going to go. Bye, Charlie. Thank you for being here. Okay. do you think Instagram shops work better than websites, or are they essentially just links to a website? I think that, yeah, I think it's part and parcel of the same thing. I think there is definitely this move towards shoppable content, that if you're on Instagram and you see a video that you want to buy through it, but often that availability is kind of underpinned from being on a website. So I think, you know, Shopify, for example, has a lot of integrations with all of the social platforms. So I think you kind of need both, but I definitely think experimenting with making your content shoppable is great. Okay. Sue says, I'm in a niche market. I sell teenage underwear. It's been challenging creating content. Hi, Sue. I was looking at your website the other day. I found and seen an increase in sales by sharing the story behind our brand, as well as sharing tips and guides with fellow mums and caregivers. You mentioned the change in the algorithms with the Instagram. Do you think this trend will continue? I mean, I think that sounds great. I think that sounds really good. You've able to find a niche that works and make those connections. I think a lot of the time it's not even necessarily the content that's going to change as much as the format. So have you tried doing those in a little video, or you know, even if it's like a video of something with text on the screen, or interacting through stories and having polls and asking people if they feel the same way, and you know, what their experience is. So I think if you found something that works well, keep doing it, but just be open to experimenting with different formats for that content. As I said, that video format is the one that's being pushed so much right now. But you know, if that doesn't work and you've got something else that is working, then, you know, if it's not broken, don't try and fix it. Okay, with regards to loyalty, if you haven't been going for long and only sell through Etsy, how do you recommend setting up a loyalty scheme? I have lots of repeat customers and feel this would work well. Would this be something you do by email? Yeah, the only thing that's a little tricky with that is if you're going through Etsy, I'm not sure what kind of rules they have about you reaching out to people outside of Etsy. I think if you could get them onto your email list, that could work well. Also, some email providers, so for example, Klaviyo, Klaviyo, that is also really good at, even if you don't have a loyalty scheme per se, it can identify who your most loyal customers are. So it depends. If you're literally going through Etsy though, I'm not quite sure how you would set up a loyalty scheme, because again, they're kind of gatekeeping that relationship for very good reasons. Got a dash, no problem. Gotta go. Okay, all right. So yeah, so in theory, yes, it would be a good thing to do. I'm not quite sure how you do it. Okay, let's see. What else have we got? Thank you so much for your wonderful feedback. You're so very welcome. With surge in TikTok as a power tool, do you think we should transfer our limited marketing time from Instagram to TikTok? As a solopreneur, I only have time for one platform, so which should I focus on? Do you know, Irene, I might be tempted to try TikTok for organic engagement. I think the other thing as well is, or actually what I might suggest you do is you try uploading. If you're making a reel for Instagram, can you upload that to TikTok? So I would see if there's content you can create. And I know that, you know, different platforms do have different preferences, and you will find some stuff works better on Instagram versus TikTok. But I think ultimately, if you're creating short form video content, I would try uploading it to both, at least for a couple of weeks, or even, you know, 3-4 weeks, see where you're getting the most reaction. And then based on that, I would also make sure you've got your analytics hooked up, so your Google Analytics, so you can actually see where the people, not just who's reacting to it, but who's actually coming to your website. And yeah, go from there. See which one is getting you the most traction, and then allow that to inform your decision. Oh dear, any tips for rebuilding trust with my followers following my Instagram being hacked and used to DM my followers with a crypto scam? Oh, that sounds awful, Sarah. I think just being really honest and open and heartfelt apology. If you've got really good customers, could you email them or message them directly and just say, I'm really sorry about this? I mean, most people will probably get that it wasn't you doing it. So yeah, I think with rebuilding trust, I think it would be about just, you know, why not do a story that says this is what happened, and you know, this is how you can avoid it happening to you too, because that's probably got to be on most people's nightmare list for sure. and set up two-factor authentication. I'm sure you already have done, but like basically if you can get it set up for anyone who's watching as well for your social media accounts. For product-based business, what would a loyalty program look like? Well, it could be lots of different things. It could be, you know, you're gaining points and working towards 10% off your next order. So going back to the idea of gifts, I found this one gift company that I really like, and I've ordered quite a few gifts from them, and I get a nice little thing that tells me that, you know, next time I order I'm going to get 10% off the following order or something like that. So I'm collecting points. There's a local retailer that I buy from quite a lot, and I've banked up about £9 worth of loyalty points, which I'm really excited about because I'm going to spend them at some point when I want to treat myself for something. There's lots of different things it could be. It doesn't always have to be monetary though. It could also be about you've planted a tree, you've got access to our insider community, lots of different things that it could be. Where would you recommend setting up a website? Are there good free versions? I think Shopify is the best for e-commerce. I do appreciate it's not the cheapest though. Some people will start with something like Squarespace, which is much less expensive right from the get-go, and then move over to Shopify when they're a bit more established. Basic Shopify is not free, and it's probably one of them. I think it's probably about £30 a month for the very basic version. But the good thing about Shopify is you'll never outgrow it. You know, you could be a multi-million, even £1 billion company and sell through Shopify, so you'll never actually outgrow it. So it's a good place to get started. It's optimized for conversion, but I do appreciate if you're not selling anything at all, it can be hard to pay that money out each month. So maybe you have to make that decision. Do you want to just pay that and hope, you know, set yourself the goal that you're going to at least recoup your costs each month? Or do you want to start with a lower cost website, but know that you have to re-platform? Well, you possibly will end up re-platforming. Many are saying that TikTok is taking over and Instagram is slowly dying. What are your thoughts on spending time between Instagram? Okay, yes, I think we answered that question, didn't we? Yeah, I think try it, just give it a go. Like, you have to be open and trying things. So postage, would you recommend charging postage on top or including it in the overall price and having free postage? I never know what people prefer. Well, technically people prefer free postage. The research suggests that if you've got an item and it's £25 and you add with £3 postage, your conversion rate will be lower than if it's £28 and free postage, even though it's the same cost at the end. You get fewer abandoned carts because there's no surprise when the postage comes in. So that is why people like Etsy, not on the high street, really push you to have free postage. It doesn't work for everybody. But technically that is the correct answer, is that yes, it means that you get a high conversion rate. I think that you can have as well, like you can incentivize people to spend a little bit more. So you can have like, let's say free shipping over £40. I think that can be a useful tool as well, because then you're also encouraging people to spend up. The best way to do that is to work out what your average order value is now, and maybe add about 10% on and set that as your free postage limit. If it's currently £20, like set your free postage limit at £25, or yeah, £25. Anything below that sounds a bit weird, because then you're encouraging people to spend up a little bit. So yeah, I'd say if you can do free postage and work it into the price of the item, then great, try that. Otherwise, try setting a free postage over a certain limit to encourage people to spend more. Are trade shows worth the investment, or is it better to use the budget on paid advertising? Well, Holly, I think it kind of depends, because trade shows, if you mean business to business trade shows, lots of people going, yeah, so business to business trade shows are for people who want to grow their wholesale, and then paid advertising. I don't know so many people who use paid advertising for their wholesale. It just really depends. I mean, they can absolutely be worth the investment. I know lots of people who did Top Drawer, several people I spoke to afterwards felt very happy with what, you know, how much they'd spent versus how many orders they'd got. I also know sometimes people go to trade shows and they don't recoup that money, but it's maybe helps them get good contacts, that kind of thing. So it's hard to know without knowing the ins and outs of your individual business. But I'd say they're slightly, you know, they are different sort of elements, they're different things. A trade show would be building out a different sales channel, and I would only really recommend it if you'd already made a start on wholesale and knew that that's where you wanted to, you know, you'd already kind of got some traction. Okay, can you say the name of the company again? Work4Good, yes, work4good.com. And then the name of the app, the local reach, that was Near Street. Well, I think it's just a really interesting concept, and I think they're trying to roll it out to more people, so definitely want to keep an eye on. Smile.io for referrals on Shopify, says Joe. Thank you, Joe, for that. Answer live done. Doing any tips of visibility, Roxanne? Excellent, wonderful. I'm so happy you feel confident. Excellent. Last question, and then we are going to wrap this up. Any tips of visibility in the really early days, doing all the stuff you're talking about here, but challenging to get traction on NOS and Etsy as need purchases for credibility? Do video content, etc., and have a mailing list, but feel like I'm at the bottom of a very high hill. I mean, to be honest, it is at the beginning. You will feel like you're shouting into the void. I think maybe even at the beginning, think about almost like building individual relationships with your customers. We tend to think about the customers as this big sort of amorphous blob, but they're all people. It's all human to human. So I think in the very early days, like, just try and talk to as many people as possible. If you're getting some interaction on social media, you know, can you talk to them? You know, what can you do to, it will be slow. It's like the trouble is a lot of the time you feel like you're pushing it and you can't see anything happening, then all of a sudden it will move. So just keep going out there, keep talking to a customer, keep having genuine conversations and building relationships, and that will help. Elevated some of the concerns I had with cost of living crisis. Okay, Ellie. Okay, and then your thoughts on Amazon for new small brands, last one. Yeah, if you can get on Amazon, it's not a walk in the park to actually get listed, but I mean, obviously it's a huge marketplace with huge traction, with like, you know, so this is probably the biggest traffic website in the world. So if you can get on and trial it, then give it a go. There's certainly lots of people who built massive businesses off the back of Amazon. But again, the same sort of caveat that I would put on Etsy and eBay and not on the high street and other curated other marketplaces. You know, you'll be building it in their territory, but you know, maybe that's okay to start off with, and you can build your own website alongside it. It's worth giving it a go. All right, I'm done. Okay, everyone. Well, I made it. Not easy listing, but worth it, says Sue. Interesting. Okay, well, thank you so much to everybody. As I said, if you want to have 7 days free trial, come check out the membership, see what it's like inside. Then I would love to have you. Welcome you to join us. You can go, it's live right now. If you go over to resilientretailclub.com, you can sign up. Otherwise, I will be sending out the replay shortly. And yes, maybe we'll go have a lie down now. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon. And if you think of a question and you didn't get a chance to answer it, ask it. Do go over to Instagram at Resilient Retail Club and ask me. You can shoot me a DM, and I'm always go through my DMs. Thank you so much. Bye.